So this is the Rage Lich build. I'm in a T15. It's a cleanse map. It's got, I believe it's a ritual tablet, a boss tablet, and then an expedition tablet. But those are the mods. A delirium also spawned. I'm actually pretty happy with how this build turned out, because it's not using a prism of belief for specters whatsoever. So you don't have to pay the 3,000 divines. The clear is really good. The bossing damage is great. It uses obviously the wafts, right, for your kind of like to help clear. And then I've got wolves that use the Infernal Legion and Tech Rod tech with the wolves. So those wolves actually do quite a bit of damage. And a lot of the clear happens because, you know, as a Lich, you have Rupture the Soul, you're pretty tanky. If you look at my energy shield, it seems kind of low at only 7,900, but it's not really the case. We also have empowered zombies. Those empowered zombies, that's actually the Prism of Belief I've been using. And a big shout out to the homie Ashen, because he is the one that was using empowered zombies to clear really stacked temples. I'm going to leave a link in the description. You can see his build for zombies. I know he's working on some now, and those guys are one of the few minions that just destroy. They just destroy temples. There's an Immured Fury. Hold on, let's go do this thing. All right, put this right here. All right, put that up. Let's roll out of here. Have the zombies going in, and then what I'm using for rage generation is I have a trenchtimbre, because I always enjoy using the trenchtimbre if you're playing the Lich. And I'm actually, well, we'll talk about it in the end. You can fast forward to the end. There's multiple ways you can do this to gain rage. Because we're using the Lich, I'm not a fan of using the shout tech, because it's really inconsistent to build this maximum rage you need, and also to trigger the rage that you need for your minions to have, for them to be constantly building rage. Because if you're not gaining rage every 3 seconds, they're going to start to lose rage. And the way it works with the shout tech is you have to be kind of like in your range to get the enemy power to actually gain rage. So if you're planning on not using a trenchtimbre and just using a focus, I'd say just don't even use warlords berserker, because you don't really need it. I mean, it's nice to have it, but the zombies are so strong that for bossing, it's really a non-issue. And then the wolves, man, I've seen those wolves hit as high as 80k, 88k a piece. We'll talk about that. I'll show it off. Right now, when they trigger tech rods and everything, they go usually from 40 to 60k each wolf, and there's 9 of them. So quite a bit of damage just from those wolves, right? I'm not using loyalty on them for to tank. They're actually there to help clear and stuff like that. The other thing too, I'm not using volcanic fissure because I want the extra slot for a minion and stuff. You can use volcanic fissure to build rage. It's actually better. The other reason I'm not using volcanic fissure is because I have death articulate gauntlets. That's why my rage is full. So it's kind of like basically playing a shaman. And then my sunder uses rage, right? But also has, I believe it's rage 3, so it also gains rage on hit. That's what allows my minions to gain rage whenever I use sunder and it hits. So quite a bit of damage. We'll go over all the damage and stuff. Maybe I should look at it now, right? With full stacks of rage and maybe in the radius of pain offering. But the clear is really good just because Rupture the Soul, you know? So, because without Rupture the Soul, it's rough. So let's look at the damage of the Plague Harvester. Right now, it's 135 DPS. I've seen this as high as the average damage for use being like 140. So, it just depends on, you know, if they're in range and of pain offering and how much rage they have. And then the wolves. Let's see what the wolves are. So each wolf is 49k. I've had this as high as 88. Insane. So 9 of them, right? So what is that? At least 500k DPS, single target. And then once they proc tech rods, it's even more, right? So really good. Pretty fun to play, honestly. That using the zombies was a really good strat to add into the build for bossing and just in general. There's a little section too. I tried using these guys, the wasps, to clear Simulacrum, and it's not good enough. They're not good enough on their own. So it really helps with the wolves and the zombies. The zombies alone are so strong. It's just I don't have my build fully built out just for all zombies, just because you know, they're a little slow. But with this in combination with all these guys, it feels really good. It's kind of like the middle road. because I have my Dialas in my Wasp. And I know zombies, they scale very well. Very, very well with quality. So I have as much quality as I can on them. You know, a corrupted level 21 with a +3. Here you go. So here is a ritual. Right, let me see what the wolves are at now. See if there's a higher number. 71. Right, 71k per wolf, and there's 9 of them. So depending on, you know, what the situation is, where the mods are at, you know, how many stacks of rage. And if we look at plague harvesters, they're at 193. 193k DPS and 160 average damage per use. And there's 5 of them flying around. Right, then you have my, you know, support minions and stuff. I have a sniper applying a maim with a chain, so everything gets slowed. And there's a reaver in here. Part of the reason why it's good to have a reaver in here is because with the way the trenchtimbre works is my attack speed for using sunder gets boosted by whatever my minions attack speed is, and reavers attack faster the more rage they have. And since I'm gaining rage, the reavers are actually gaining attack speed, which makes my sunder attack faster. You know, depending on how you want to lay out your minions, you could also have a if you have space for it, you could have a, what do they call it, the brutes, because brutes are really good for building stun. Very, very good for building stun on bosses and stuff. You know, run through. See, the clear with Rupture the Soul is awesome. It's so nice. Here's the boss. So we have some power charges already. Wait. Let's get some power charges. So I get power charges via this, using Pain Offering and also Lingering Shadows. Or Lingering Illusion. You leave these clones, and then if those clones die, you get a power charge. Right, so summon some zombies. Right. The thing, though, is that they kind of body block because of all the wolves. It would have been nice if there was only blue zombies and you didn't get normal zombies. And then another thing I like to use is the sunder, right? So if you just saw, if you use sunder on broken armor, it increases the damage from 20% increased damage to 40. So it's huge. So yeah, this is the build. Let's talk about it. So let's talk about rage first and how I'm managing the rage, right? Because there's 2 ways to do it. You could either not use these gloves. So these gloves allow me to generate rage. And since I'm playing a Lich and we have eternal life, we don't actually lose the maximum 5% life per second. So we don't have to worry about that, right? Because we're Liches. So we just get to gain all the benefits of just gaining rage. It's like you being a shaman without it. The downside is no energy shield and no resistances. So we're using quite a bit of uniques, right? 1, 2, 3 of them right here. So you gotta make sure you cap your resistances. But yeah, the way I'm doing it, building rage with warlords berserker, right? With this, the reason I bring this up is because if you're gonna use the shout tech, it's not worth it. And the way I build rage is by attacking with sunder, which is this. I used to use volcanic fissure when I wasn't using the death articulate gauntlets, which that's still an option for you to do. Like if you don't use these gauntlets, you're gonna have to have a rage builder. So you'll need 2 skills, preferably volcanic fissure, right? Because volcanic fissure attacks fast, and then you would just put, excuse me, rage 3 on it. So every time you use volcanic fissure, you gain 5 rage, and it basically fills up your little rage bar right here. Pretty fast. It's pretty easy. It's just that I kind of automated it by using death articulated gauntlets. The reason I still have sunder here, right, is because in order for warlords berserker to trigger, you actually have to gain rage. It can't just be passively gaining. So the way I gain rage, right, if I put these death articulates on, right, you can see my rage building up. There's a caveat. Once your rage is full, you can't gain any more rage because it's full, right? So I actually have to put on rageforge in here. So I use 10 rage if possible. So I actually spend rage when I use it, and then if I hit any minions, I gain rage. If I hit any monsters, I actually gain rage because of rage 3. So that satisfies the criteria for warlords berserker if you have gained rage recently. So this gives allies in my presence, you know, 5 rage, and it's way more consistent. I tried using this tech without using the with using the shouts instead, right? Putting in a focus on here, it was way inconsistent to be using in maps. You have to be like, even with astral projection, you have to be hitting like a certain amount of monsters to give you 5 monster power. With the boss, it's fine, you know, but still you have to use it twice because for one, your rage is gonna be full, right? If you're gonna do it this way, and if with Death Articulates, the first time you use a shout, it doesn't actually spend any rage, so you have to shout again to use the rage, and then hit the boss to gain the rage. It was super clunky, so I definitely do not recommend doing that. Like, it's actually better if you just use the focus, and then you just abandon Warlord Berserker. That's my opinion anyway. And then if you abandon Warlord Berserker, you can like unsocket this guy from nothing, and then maybe you could just maybe path down here instead, and then allocate this, however you want to do it, you know. But that would be my recommendation if you're doing the rage tech with the Lich, to just stick with like a trenchtimbre, and then attack with sunder or volcanic fissure. It's just way more reliant while doing it in maps to keep the rage full on your minions to get that 30% more damage multiplier. So let's talk about the gear now. So, right, we just talked about the gloves, right? If you choose to use the normal gloves, you're gonna have to use a rage spender or rage builder skill. That's also tied to using a trenchtimbre. Now the trenchtimbre I have is 3 socket, so it's kind of nice. You can either put spirit in here with Ozkapas up to 45 spirit, or if you don't need the spirit, like for this build right here, I have 30% physical damage. That's extra lightning damage. It's huge. It's a lot, right? And then we're using the new Bones of Valir. With these guys, you can now sprint. So now that you can sprint, it's nice. But with that said, it's kind of expensive if you want one that's, you know, double socketed with the resistance on it. So if you want to use normal boots, you totally can. You'll just have to see that the minion costs, I lose 1 plague harvester, right? It might be worth it for me to just lose 1 plague harvester, and then I can have 9k ES, you know, don't have to worry about, you know, certain like caps on resistances. So that's something to think about, right? You don't really need to have this boot, but it's nice. But is it really nice to just have 1 extra plague harvester when in this build the majority of bossing damage, it's really nice, it comes from the zombie. So, but first let's keep talking about the gear, right? So this is up to you. You don't really have to use this. You can if you want. So, and then here's my belt, right? I'm using a Darkness Enthroned, 15% increased efficiency. That's socketed in here is the Ralakash. And then I have the one that gives enemies cursed take 6% increased damage. So if you put it on the belt, they now take 11% depending on what you have. This one is 98% increased effective socketed items. And just make sure that if you're getting a Darkness Enthroned and you want to use it this way, you make sure it's the right type of Darkness Enthroned. This one is socketed items as though it was a helmet, right? Some other good options are body piece, so then you can put the reduced curse, and then increase energy shield recharge start time, or energy shield recharge rate. You know, that's really nice. And then I'm using the usual stuff. Unset rings for extra skills. Sacramental robe is nice if you can get it. I got super lucky with this. I bought this for 40 divs with and then I redid the suffixes. So the total cost for me to make this was about 200 divines, right? So not too bad. And then a +3 minion helmet, kind of nice. The amulet, you're just gonna try to use what you can get. I'm borrowing this from someone who's nice enough to let me use it, right? So just try to get the best stuff that you can get for minion levels and as much spirit as you can. But that's pretty much it for the gear that I kind of want to mention. There is this, you know, you can get one of these. I actually dropped the 70% one and then I qualityed it up, so got really lucky. Usually you get ones that are about like, I don't know, anywhere from 40 to like 40 to 50 recovers mana per second or something like that. 40 to 60. But it's kind of nice. I don't know if this is still the best in slot. I kind of just use it to kind of automate my mana regen. And since we're playing a Lich, your mana regen is actually pretty fast because of Soulless Form. Because Soulless Form, your mana regen is based on your maximum life pool. And the other nice thing with the Lich is we have our charms back, right? So definitely recommend a freeze charm. I used a normal one instead of the unique one because I like having the extra charges. So it's a little faster to fill up. And then a stun charm. You know, this one doesn't even have any. I should get one that actually has mods on it. And then I have a slow charm right here. I would swap out one of these charms for maybe a dousing charm, because if you do get ignited, it's kind of annoying. But, you know, it's not too bad. This is, I kind of hate dealing with chilled ground, so that's why I have a slow charm. The slow charm helps with chilled ground. So if you see here, right, I also have grand spectrums in here. I'm not actually using these. I don't actually need grand spectrums. This is part of the gear thing. If you decide to use, you know, death articulates or the bones of Valir, it's going to be really rough filling up your resistances. So my resistances right now, they're capped, thankfully, but the way they're capped is kind of a pain in the ass. What I'm using is grand spectrum sapphires, and these are pricey. These are like 48 divines each, you know, so it can get really expensive. That's why, like, if you think about it, maybe getting the bones of Valir out of there and just using normal boots and losing one plague harvester is way better than putting on sapphire grand spectrums, right? And then you could have 2 open sockets. But yeah, if you use normal boots, you could have 2 open sockets, right? You could put anything in here. Let me see, with that normal boot, so I would have to, you know, change it out, make sure I have enough decks to use these gloves and all that kind of stuff. But, and then maybe you could socket in green grand spectrums instead, which then allows you to maybe get another plague harvester if you can, if you have enough spirit. In this case, I don't. So, right, let me put these back in. So there's a lot of flexibility on how you want to build it. So those are some options for you, right? If you decide to, you know, use normal boots over bones of Valir, it kind of frees it up, and you could put some other gems in your sockets. So it's really up to you and how you want to build your build. I think that's all I want to talk about for the gear, right? Jewels. Okay, so let's talk about damage and the skills. So this is what I have for skills. My raised zombie is level 37, right? The prism of belief that I'm using is actually the raised zombie gem, which is really nice, because if you've seen the prices for the prism of belief for specters, it's 3,000 divines. Who has, you know, no one has 3,000 divines. The best part about it is you don't need it. You don't need it to do all the content. You could just use 10 divine raised zombie skills for +3, which is really good. So it's kind of nice. I mean, you could boost raised zombie all the way if you put a Dialos in here. You can put a Dialos in here for more quality. You can put the Ulna tools in here and then replace like this lightning, and then these guys would hit for a lot, right? If you look at it, yeah, level 38, 608% more damage with empowered zombies. So quite a bit. Since I'm using the plague harvesters to map, I have it set up like this. Since a majority of the time I'm going to be running from spot to spot, I'd rather have the specters do a little more damage. And then my raised zombies are just there for, you know, once we stop in a fight, I've got some power charges going. I start just like slamming zombies down, either at a boss or some type of league mechanic or some type of game mechanic that's, you know, about to spawn a bunch of monsters. And the way we're spawning raised zombies and getting empowered charges or power charges is through lingering illusion, right? This thing costs 27, it costs 30 spirit. I've got profane charge infusion in here. I've got charge profusion 2 in here. So 30% chance to gain an additional charge, which is nice. You can gain like 2 power charges. And the way this works with, well, prolonged duration, let me talk about all of it, and harmonic remnants. So to collect the remnants from 35% further away. But what happens is whenever you roll, you leave this little shadow. So here's this little shadow every time I roll. That shadow has 1% of your max life. So when that shadow dies, it drops a little like remnant. You pick it up, you get a power charge. Right? That's one way to get a power charge. And then the other way is through Pain Offering. Because Pain Offering over here, it has this. Guatelitzi's Ablation, right? So whenever you do this, your offering gives you a power charge every 4 seconds. And since we're summoning 2 offerings with Dance Macabre, you get two power charges every time you do your Pain Offering. So you gotta wait 4 seconds, right? You get 2 power charges, and then you can do 2 sets of empowered zombies. And it's pretty good. You're always gonna be using Pain Offering, so you're always gonna have power charges. You're gonna be dodge rolling, so that, you know, those will be getting killed. You'll be getting more power charges, and then you could just spam like your empowered zombies. It works pretty well. It's really smooth. So that's how the zombies work, pretty much. So what I have them right now for level 37, it's 579% more damage with hits. It's really noticeable how strong they are. And then right here, the next one, we've got our Plague Harvesters. right? This is a level 21 corrupted gem, and it's level 35 with just, you know, +2 trench timber, +3 on the helmet, +3 on the amulet, and then +4 on the scepter. So I also have the 2 minion skill levels in here, a Diala's Desire and a minion mastery. So 35, which is enough for clearing maps and stuff, getting Rupture to Soul to proc. So our clear is really good with, you know, 5 of these Plague Harvesters. They also break armor, which is nice. And then this synergizes, the broken armor synergizes with obviously Sunder, right? So instead of 20% broken armor, it's 40%. Their damage, unbuffed, 107, pretty good. And then we just saw, right, in the beginning of the maps, what their damage was fully buffed. And then the next one up is the Wolfpack. I'm actually using Infernal Legion Tech Rod tech on the Wolfpack. These guys are level 32. I only have them level 19 because with the +1 corrupted gem, with one more level, they'll be 33. But the level 20 Spirit Gem is like 60 divines. It's a lot. So I'll get around to buying it at some point, but I figure this is fine right now. Level 19. The other thing too you have to remember is this is a hybrid gem, so the higher the level, the more strength you're gonna need. So right now I need 80 strength to put this on. If I get these guys to level 33, right, with level 20, I'm gonna need 85 strength, which I don't have. So something to be cognizant of. And the skill gems in here are Tech Rods, Infernal Legion, 3, a Feeding Frenzy, a Heavy Swing, and a Muster. So we just saw right in maps, this thing, I've seen this thing go as high as each wolf, well on the tooltip is 88k, right? And then through the mapping that we just did, it was 70 something, but it usually averages around 40k to 60k per wolf. Unbuffed, they're at 29. That's already still really good, and there's 9 of them. So what's 9 times, you know, 9 times 30 is essentially 270k with the 9 wolves for single target, right? So pretty good damage output for a wolf pack for, I think, how much spirit is it? 43 spirit, right? So a lot of good value for that. And then we have a Skeletal Storm Mage in here. There's a Rakiatas in here. You know, you don't really need this. If you didn't have this Rakiatas, you could put in Shock in here, so a higher shock chance. Because essentially, he's just kind of here to give shock magnitude, right? Shock bot. Also with this Plague Harvester, I should have mentioned, this Ulna Tools that's in here, this is kind of expensive. If you didn't have that, you know, put something else in there. You could put in like also a lightning attunement, maybe a rapid attacks. Same thing with the Dialas. If you don't have that, put something else in there. Whatever you want. But once you start, you know, min-maxing and stuff and you do get good gear, this is kind of what I have, right? So here's our pain offering, Brutus Brain. Once again, you got to have this if you want to make power charges, and then your usual stuff, Dance Macabre, magnified area. We have a sniper in here. All he's doing is putting on debuffs. So Maim, Chain 3, Dominus Grasp, and then a Last Gasp. So, you know, he doesn't reset the minion timer when he dies. So just there for muster, basically. Then we have Sundered Armor, or Sunder, I should say. Right, this is what I use for my, I already talked about it. This is what I use for my Spending Rage and Building Rage. And then your Cleric, and then a Reaver. The Reaver is nice. I have this guy to help break armor. Right. You could put, where is it? Actually, you know what? I should put in Support Gem that adds 5% more damage. Here you go. Uruk Smelting. So, put that in there instead of Armor Demolisher. So that way, whenever, you know, you're fighting a boss and it's breaking armor, every time it does a full armor break, affected targets take up the 5% increased damage, physical damage. So the armor is going to break a lot, and it's going to break fast because of the Ulna tools in your Plague Harvester. Right, so that's a nice little tech to do. And then we're using our Curse Blasphemy, right, with Temporal Chains, Magnified Area, and Ritualistic Curse to make the radius for Blasphemy bigger. Now, since we are using Curse, you could use Despair, right? You could even manually cast Despair if you wanted to. But I don't really feel the need to. If I want more damage, sure, I'll probably take this out and you could put in Despair. But I'd rather have the Temporal Chains because the slow really helps. It adds like a 30% slow, which also slows movement speed and attack speed and cast speed for monsters in the area. So it's really helpful for, you know, let's say you're doing like Simulacrum, or you're in a stacked map or something, or even like hunting for Omens of Light, whatever you're doing. It feels really good to have a, you know, Temporal Chains to help with that extra like defensive layer. And then I talked about this already, Lingering Shadow. So yeah, that's kind of the build. I'm like having fun with it. It's pretty good. I like it a lot. Some options, you know, if you don't want to use plague harvesters, right? Maybe it's too expensive or whatever. You could use brutes. Brutes are fine too. I was using brutes as well. The brute prism of belief is actually really cheap. It's only 3 divines, so it's something to think about, right? Instead of using zombies as your prism, what you could do on another budget version is you use brutes in here. You put brutes in here, and then your brutes will be your main damage source, and are really good for clear, right? It's easier. It's pretty easy to get your brutes to like level 38, and then they're just clearing with the shockwave and stuff like that. I'll maybe do another video with the brutes in the same type of fashion. But this build, comparatively to using like you know, specters as your main source of damage with the prism of belief, it's a lot cheaper. Now, you know, when you're first starting off, you might not have all these uniques and stuff, but in general, I would probably want to use like a trenchtimbre, and then, you know, normal gloves, normal boot, and then that gives you 11k energy shield, which makes you significantly tankier, right? The only difference is, because you're not using death articulates, is you have to build rage if you want to, you know, do this to get the full benefit for commanding rage, which is what I have on my anointment for the amulet. You have to use volcanic fissure to kind of like build it up. So once you have enough money, if you want to go this route, you can automate it by putting on those gauntlets. And then, yeah. So yeah, hopefully you enjoy the build. I have some videos towards the end of doing like a simulacrum and then a damage test with like Xesht. So enjoy. See you on the next one. Bye.
We that dreamed. We in nightmare. We that are one. She winter's envy. Of life. We that fail. Believe me, you will fall exile.
None can oppose me.
So be it. Keep your precious sanity, my.
In this last part of the video, I'm taking the same build through my friend's temple. It's pretty much fully built out, right? It's only like missing 4 rooms. Now there's some issues going through the temple with minions. There's a lot of body blocking, especially those 2 bum zombies that come with the empowered zombie. All they do is just get in the way. And then even though the wolves are helpful, but you know, they're just blocking like the main damage dealer, which is the zombie. So maybe if you change it around, take some stuff off, it could be better. But I mean, we still get through the temple. We still can. It's just to do something like this many rooms, it's probably going to take an hour. Also, I'm in a party of 2, so maybe if I was solo and I had my own temple fully built out, it'll be a little smoother. But anyway, enjoy the video.